Hey everyone, it's Micah with Service Reef, and today in our mobilization conversation, we have a unique guest for you. Josiah Harling is the president of Compel Global, and his background is really in a space of getting folks to engage and walk through their journey and make sure that they get over those areas in which they get stuck. But also, he's in a unique space because he interacts between the individual, the agency, and also the sending church as well. And so he has a unique perspective today that I'm really excited that you get a chance to hear. So listen in, follow us, subscribe below so you can get these kind of conversations in there, and let's get started. Hey everyone, this is Micah with Service Reef, and we are so glad to have another mobilization conversation. And I'm really privileged today to introduce Josiah Harling, who is the president of Compel Global. Josiah and I have known each other for a couple of years now, and he has a unique gift. You, Josiah, have a unique gift in that you have a experience both in the mobilization space, as well as really just kind of like watching other organizations do this. And that's led to some fun adventures this year that I'm really excited about. So Josiah, welcome. And what would you add to that introduction? Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, first off, the main thing that I would add to that introduction is that yes, the name is Josiah, but my friends call me JJ. Micah, you're in the friend zone. So most of my ministry contacts would know me as JJ Harling. And I've been in the mobilization and mission space for the last 20 years, worked with a wide variety of different organizations in that time, and have had the privilege of doing some consulting for a couple of different organizations as well. So I started Compel Global about 3 years ago, and we are really unique in this space of missions mobilization because we are a matchmaking organization. So we focus purely on mobilization work. We place people with many different sending agencies. And so I've kind of learned a lot about how each of them operate and been able to kind of soak up a lot of the trends in mobilization. So I'm really excited about this conversation and really excited to be here.
Thank you so much for that. That's awesome. Help me understand, JJ, in this space, like, you've walked a lot of people through, and I know that each journey, like as we talk today, I'm just going to kind of put a caveat. Each journey is different. Each journey is unique to that individual, to that person, to where God may be leading them in their lives, what skills and passions they have, et cetera, right? But help me understand, what does a typical journey look like for someone who's kind of being mobilized into that space? Walk me through just kind of at a high level, maybe for those that aren't as familiar with maybe a sending process or long-term serving at a high 10,000 foot level. What's kind of a typical journey look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. And you're right. Most of my work has focused on long-term placements. So like open-ended career service overseas. And, um, I think sometimes there can be a desire for people to really have an immediate impact, right? So like, I want to go and I want to go yesterday, or I'll be on the field in 3 months. And so I think it's helpful to have a bit of a roadmap laid out. The 20 years that I've been doing this, on average, it's probably been, I would say 18 to 24 months or longer, 2.5 years of discernment and then finding the right agency and then support raising before deployment. So really from the early conversations with me and then with a sending agency, it's going to take a lot. It's going to take a lot in that process. We're going to take several months to provide some coaching and then get connected with an agency, and that's on the short end. And then once through an agency application, then they would be appointed. They'd begin training and support raising. That journey alone, on average, I've seen take between 12 and 24 months. You can try to rush it, but I'm not sure that's always a good thing. We want to see people really thriving 10 years down the road. And that means they're going to take time really developing a solid partner base, not just, quick one-time gifts. We want to see long-term financial partners with people. So this journey of mobilization really does take a long time.
In that journey, JJ, like how you said something that just kind of sparked something for me. I'm curious in that space as they're thinking of those 18 to 24 months at minimum, and then broken down, again, each journey is different, family situations, that stuff. How have you seen things shift over the last maybe 5 to even 10 years of, technology comes, and I think of, those college students that are like, I just want to go to Tanzania. And so they just book a flight, like it. And you're like, you said something there that was interesting, which is we want you to build healthy, you want you be there in 10 years. Maybe compare and contrast maybe some stories or some different ideas there, JJ, of what does it look like for those who've done it well and kind of walk through that path, and then those maybe that aren't, or maybe what trends have shifted for you as you've been journeying with people on this for a while.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. I think that there is an immediacy that's been really popular among churches and young adults in recent years. Right? We there. I think that was the trend with even millennials of I want to just plow my way there. I want to get there. I want to get there quick. What I've seen even in the last year or two potentially has kind of been a healthy correction of that, where a lot of people really have been embracing more of a stewardship model. You know, we want to steward the influence, the impact, and the resources that God has given us. And that means, viewing this more as a marathon than a sprint. And some of that is my coaching to people. I get that. But I've been pleasantly surprised by a lot of candidates who have just said, hey, we really want to do this right. We don't just want to do this fast. And that's been really encouraging. I think, even a lot of churches have seen maybe the detriment of a rush in that mobilization process. And so they've even slowed down a little bit as well. And I think that's really healthy and really encouraging to me. So there is a desire to do it well, to do it right, to view it as a long-term, you know, journey or investment. Um, I think case in point right now, several of the candidates that I'm working with, are still 3, 4 years away from intended deployment. And they're recognizing now is the right time to begin talking with me. And that's really encouraging to me. It's few and far between now that I hear someone say, well, I plan to be there, in January and it's December, so it's good.
So in this space, I kind of hear three legs of a stool, and I don't know how you describe it, JJ. So in that space, but I almost think like, okay, so you have the individual, you have the church that is they're part of or actively engaged in, and then there's the sending agency or someone that they're going to be the field partner with, right? And within Compel Global, you have kind of this unique role where you actually get to see all three pieces at play and help connect the
I was
dots.
going to say we're right in the middle of that triangle there, Micah.
I think that's really cool. How are you seeing this done well? And then maybe what are one or two things that you see like, ooh, man, if we could tweak this, or when I see this, it'd be great to, I try to step in or try to help facilitate that. Like, what are some things you're just seeing doing well? Maybe one or two things that are some challenges in that coordination effort.
Yeah. Well, I guess to begin with, let me unpack a little bit of the model because it's weird to be at the center of that triangle, but that's exactly where we are. So my background, I've served with a couple of different sending organizations on staff as a mobilization director, different mobilization types of roles. And the trend that I would find is there were a lot of people who were a fit for missions. They just were not a fit for the particular organization I was serving. Um, maybe they didn't fit us quite perfectly theologically, or they didn't want to go to the places that we had or the roles that we had. And so I had to kind of take my hands off, and that's a loss. And it was really frustrating. So when we created Compel Global, the idea was that we could be a matchmaker. We could represent many different sending agencies, uh, and we could really be an advisor for candidates to help them realize I fit here, I don't fit there. Um, and as we began kind of researching, is there a need for this? I remember talking with a church missions committee, and there was a woman on the committee Her name was, Laura or something like that. And she raised her hand. She said, JJ, where were you 18 years ago? And I was like, I don't know, and graduated out of college, but, young, career. She said, where were you 18 years ago? Because God was calling me to the mission field and I couldn't figure out who to go with, what roles exist, how to get started. And so I concluded that that really must not be God's plan for my life. I took a job in the secular workforce and I've regretted it every day since. Where were you 18 years ago? Because I needed this. And it was like a light bulb went on for us. We realized, wait a minute, I bet there's a lot of people in that space. Uh, Years ago, the GMHC conference, they did a survey for attendees and they asked, what are the hurdles that are keeping you from the field? And the vast majority of people, their top answer was, I don't know how to get started. And so we just realized this is a need. There are people that God is calling who can't figure out how to get started, and so they're not going. And so we want to just step in that role as an advisor and as a help. And so, positioning ourselves really in between those three different pillars, right? There's the individual who feels called to go. There's the church who feels called to send, and truly, there's a sending authority voice that rests with the local church. And then there's the sending agency. We're a firm believer in sending agencies. We serve many different sending agencies. Uh, but the right fit really takes some time to discern. What agency has the right opportunity, what agency aligns theologically with both the candidate and the sending agency, and the church. I'm sorry. And so, there's a lot of coordination that needs to happen there. And so if we can help kind of be a filter to filter out all the options that don't fit, we really will be able to serve the candidate a lot better and the church a lot better. So that's why we've positioned ourselves where we are. And I think what's working is the collaboration between local churches. We connect with hundreds of churches nationwide, and they view us as part of their mobilization staff, and that is tremendous. It really allows churches to be at the forefront of the sending process, because we make sure that any agency we connect their people to aligns theologically with the church. We know what the church values, and that is our meat and potatoes of the process. We're going to keep the pastor informed in that journey. We're really going to partner together well. So that is a big priority for us. I think some of those things that maybe, we would like to see work better, really would be a greater number of, how would I put it? A greater number of candidates with the right readiness and seriousness. We do get a lot of people that are just kind of exploring mission, and that's great. We're thrilled with that. But we really do want to find people that are committed to moving forward in this journey long term. And that is, I think, the big challenge. We want more and more of those people.
And that's a coordinated effort too. So that's interesting. JJ, last question kind of in this mindset. And I want to kind of shift to what the adventure has been for you a little bit. Fast forward 5 years, 10 years. What do you think this mobilization space looks like in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I think already, um, already there has been a significant movement um, of utilizing creative skill sets to go and serve, right? We've seen that with things like Scatter Global or, any number of different initiatives. It's kind of changing the definition of what long-term missionary looks like. And please keep in mind, I I love the historical narrative of long-term missionaries. My great grandparents went to a cannibalistic tribe in Nigeria. I love the heritage that I have, and they were exactly what you think of when you when you think traditional missionaries. And God worked tremendously through that, and still will in the future. But I've also seen very creative strategies um, for workers going overseas, either taking their jobs with them or having creative skill sets that that there is a place for in kingdom work. You got to know one of my favorite passages to teach on is actually Moses at the burning bush, because God asked him this question, and this is really a foundational value of Compel Global. But God asked Moses the question. He says, Moses, what's in your hand? And when we're coaching people, we ask them that same question. What are the things that are in your hand? And for Moses, it was a staff, which represents professional skill sets, but it was a lot more than that. It was his background, his story. It was his values, his passions, even his pains. And when I'm coaching a person, I really challenge them, take an inventory. What has God put in your hand? Because you're called to steward that. And we're going to find you a mission placement that allows you to steward all of those things God puts in your hand. So we're not going to send you overseas to go paint a building. He's given you far greater skill sets than that. We really want to steward those skill sets. So that really becomes kind of a priority for us here at Compel.
And if I'm guessing correctly, led to a book this year, in walking those individuals through that journey. The book is called Stride, Moving Forward When You Feel Stuck, by Josiah Harling. Tell me a little bit about that story, Josiah. How did that book come about? What was some of the impetus behind that writing?
Yeah, no, great question. So I've always kind of wondered about writing. It's something that I enjoy doing, and I love coaching people. And I've seen a lot of people that really feel called towards something, right? We all know Ephesians 2:10. We are created for good works that God has prepared uniquely in advance for us to do. And so we understand as believers that God has uniquely designed us for something. But I would meet a lot of people who said, I'm designed for something that I can't quite figure out how to get to those good works. I'm stuck. And there's a variety of reasons people are stuck. So I would start kind of, you know, compiling a lot of these reasons that people are stuck, as well as a bunch of the different strategies to help them embrace forward momentum in some of these key areas. And then as I started writing, I write a lot of stories, and most of my embarrassing moments are in this book, which is great, but lots of Bible teaching as well. But I started realizing that there was a bit of a framework that was developing. And so the idea of Stride is actually built on an acrostic, on a coaching framework. I think your truest vocation is at the intersection of 6 core components. All right. So S would be your story. And when we think about what prepares us for our future, we often think about our resume, which is a list of accomplishments. Our story is something totally different. Your story is often built on the things that you've endured, which brings a lot of value out of our pain points. And if you look scripturally, every time God calls somebody into greater purpose, almost 100% of the time, it actually has something to do with the pain points in their past. So we want to take an inventory of that stuff and really write out, what is the story that God has allowed in your life. That's preparation for your future. T would be your triggers. What are the things that break your heart and also break the heart of God? We want to find that emotional, trigger. Think of Nehemiah, right? He sees the condition of the wall, and it's like, oh, this is painful, and he sits and he weeps for a few days. What brings that emotive response out of us? We want to find that trigger. R is the things you got to release. And I've seen so many people get stuck on this stuff because we're carrying our shame, we're carrying our image, we're carrying expectations we have for ourselves or even for God. And we got to release that stuff. So R is for release. What are you carrying that you really need to release in order to move forward? I would be your identity. And here, these are things like your strengths, your gifts, your abilities. They're a part of the overall picture. They're just not the whole thing. D is a sense of direction. I could teach on that all day long. And E is a sense of endurance. Most of us, we get into this journey, and if we don't see results right away, it's like, oh, maybe God isn't calling me. and sometimes God is just saying, no, I want the maturing process that happens in a long-term marathon view. I want you to have some endurance as a key characteristic of this process. So we've built a framework, a coaching framework I use with candidates on these 6 things. And it's been a ton of fun. Now in that direction piece, I want to draw a little bit of attention to that because uh, as I've taught on this, I've taught a lot of different seminars, I've preached on this, I've coached people through this. What I find is that a lot of people come to me and they say, JJ, would you just pray for me to have clarity on what my path is supposed to look like? Would you pray for me to have clarity on what my path is supposed to look like? And I kind of feel like a jerk when I say no. And I don't mean it disrespectfully, but I think the thing is God doesn't tend to give clarity the way that we want. See, we're asking for a floodlight. We're like, God, would you illuminate the whole path so I can see everything that's coming? And God's like, nah, I'm going to give you a lantern because I'm just going to illuminate the next step. And it's because he wants you to trust him and have courage for what comes beyond. And most of us, we're actually making clarity for the whole path a prerequisite of taking any action. And I think we're stalling out because of it. Whether that's in missions or just your discipleship journey, your journey as a follower of Jesus, whatever career that's leading you towards, if we're asking God to give illumination to the whole path, we are going to be permanently stuck because God calls us to be courageous with just enough light for the next step. And I really feel like that's a huge part of this. And so the book deals a lot with that.
I appreciate the holistic nature of it, JJ, and I don't mean that like just in like in a word, thing that can conjure a lot of words and meaning and stuff. But I mean, just when you think about the journey, like God is interested in every single step, every piece of it. And he's wired us in a certain way. And so by taking that into the coaching, by taking that into the experience and helping people discover through that, that helps influence that. Right. And I love what you said there at the end of in that direction piece. Like if you think that one of my fallacies sometimes I think JJ is I think that I'm done, right? Like, oh, I'm good. Like I've been on this journey for a while and God doesn't have anything else. And you're like, no. He's never done. Like not until the very last day. And in that space, like there's always ways to dive in more. And I love the last two, direction and endurance, a little bit of not just, yeah, what you're saying. Hey, it's a lamp unto our feet, right? Not a spotlight down the road. Also, though, in the endurance piece, would you talk a little bit about the endurance in today's day and age? I feel like we're in a culture, and maybe this is just me coming as a parent, a dad of 4 kids, of the you want something, it's there. You want to watch a show, you can find a streaming service for it. You can do all these things. God and the spiritual life is not something that can be done and cataloged in just a, hey, I'm going to push a button and I get results. There is an endurance piece to this. How do you build resilience and endurance into that process or help folks realize that that's a part of this as well?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think first off is seeing the value in that, you know. The analogy that comes to mind is cooking. All right. So, you're cooking. We just had Thanksgiving last week. When you throw a Thanksgiving turkey in the oven and you realize you're crunched on time and you're like, man, I'm gonna just crank up the heat. I'm gonna go to 500 or whatever. And what ends up happening, you try to speed it up. What ends up happening is you end up burnt out on the outside and ripped raw on the inside. Burnt on the outside and raw on the inside. And what I've seen with so many people as they go through this process of trying to embrace a sense of calling in their lives, if you try to rush it, you end up burnt out because you've been running a million miles an hour and you end up torn raw on the inside, right? That's a problem. And if you instead, you got to think through, man, you put that thing in the oven at the right temperature and you give it time. Time's the secret ingredient of all chefs. Okay. But time is what makes your life fragrant. And we talk a lot about this idea of, I want the fragrance of Christ to come out of me. That's what endurance does. It raises that scent where people say, "Whoa, wait a minute, I'm hungry for something." And I've seen that over and over and over again. The people that um, make me hunger after maturing in God are the ones who are seasoned with time. They're late in their journey. They've been doing a long obedience in the same direction. And I'm like, man, I want my life to look like that, you know? And I think we've got to reframe the narrative so that endurance is not seen as a hurdle, but endurance is seen as a value, you know? Um, you want your life to have an impact. It's got to involve time. Time is the secret ingredient in your impact. Uh, so I just think that's so important. Now then you raise the question, how do you keep people engaged when it is a long process? And I think you want to focus people on bite-sized progress. I think you want to keep people engaged with hope. The book lists out a bunch of these different things, and there are specific action points related to each of those. But when you're going through that mission journey, what can you do to cultivate to cultivate intentionality in that space in between? It's 4 years from now. Okay, well, I'm going to read some missionary biographies. That's really important. I'm going to take a perspectives class. I'm going to connect up with a mentor or another person who is going through the same journey with me. I'm going to connect with my pastor. These are bite-sized incremental steps. They don't feel that important, but they're really important for keeping you engaged as you journey through an endurance process. As you journey through a marathon, you gotta have fuel to continue. I just rambled a ton for you, Micah, but hopefully
No, I love it. I think this preparing your heart. I think there's a couple things that resist that element of time. I think true spiritual maturity, and when you're thinking of long-term missions, you need that, right? Because you are going to need to trust the journey now when it's, in your own culture, in your own context, and learn to trust and learn to endure even now in the little stuff, because as you get into the field, it gets hard. It just gets harder. Small cracks get amplified, right? So trying to address some of those things in yourself and in your process, in your own beliefs. Um, and then the heart element is just something that resists that as well. So I think those are two pieces. Just, I love that idea of the turkey. That was a great analogy, JJ, of just like, all right, it's a good one. It's a good one.
Well, we've all been there too. I'm gonna rush this process, and it never comes out.
Yeah.
It's gross. And that's such a bummer. So yeah, I think that the missions journey is one piece, but applying it more broadly,
Yeah.
this is the challenge for every pastor, every congregation member, right? As they're wrestling through the journey of faith, uh, we need to redefine success. Um, I worship here at New Life Church in Colorado Springs, and a couple of our pastors, they're just obsessed with that quote. I think it's from Eugene Peterson. Don't quote me on that, but it's a long obedience in the same direction, right? And they've said, hey, that is the definition of success. The definition of success is not the platform at the biggest church that's out there. It's not, crushing it in my career. It's not any of these different things. It's a long obedience in the same direction. And we've got to start celebrating those stories of saints who are at the end of their lives, who have lived a long obedience in the same direction. And when you say, wow, I want my life to look like that. Like that's where we're going to see success.
It is Eugene Peterson, by the way. I just
Hey,
Googled it
there we
while we are
go.
on there.
Good
So
deal. Awesome.
nice poll.
Okay.
All right. So as folks read this book or engage in stride and hopefully get past those things that are getting them stuck, but we realize that each person is kind of like unique. If there's one piece of information or encouragement that you would love readers to take away from the book, what would that be?
Yeah. I'm going to go a step further on that. So not just one piece of encouragement, but actually in the back of the book, there's a link to a website, and the website If you go to that website, you actually download the workbook. And it is a self-discovery process, not just applicable for missions. This is for any follower of Jesus, right? But it takes all these teaching ideas and these stories from the book, and all of a sudden now it becomes personal, where they're just going through a series of questions on each of those topics that'll guide their personal discernment journey. Best case scenario, they're doing that in community. We have small groups that are going through Stride together because they need to be able to talk and process those ideas. But that's where you're going to see the most value. And I think the hope is that we just have, a lot of Jesus followers that begin going through that workbook, begin uncovering, and the workbook is free, by the way. It's just included in the purchase price of the book. But that's where people are actually going to begin making progress. Now, the other thing I do want to mention about the book is 100% of the proceeds of the book actually go to international ministry among vulnerable populations all over the world. One of my favorites is an anti-trafficking ministry we help in Uganda. So not a penny of the proceeds stays here or with Compel. It all goes out the door. But the narrative there is that as you take steps towards embracing the good works that God is calling you to do, the world benefits. And even by purchasing this book, it emphasizes that, and it just illustrates that. So that's the heart.
I love that heart. I love that heart. Okay, so JJ, anything else that you would want to say kind of in that topic or around the book or anything?
No, I mean, I would say we've covered a lot of it. If you want to check it out, it's available on Amazon. That's the easiest place to find it. We do sell it when we're out, teaching, speaking, that kind of a thing. But the easiest place to check it out is on Amazon. You can do that, and then hopefully it brings benefit to you.
Yeah. Again, that is Stride, Moving Forward When You Feel Stuck. The author is Josiah Harling. Before we leave here, I just have a couple other questions for you really quick.
Yeah.
This is a Service Reef podcast, so I have to at least ask, can you share a story maybe of how Service Reef has helped you or your team in the past? What's your journey or experience been like?
Yeah, no, I love what you guys are doing. I think the heart for mobilization really carries through. And I'll just I'll just tell you, I've worked with, as I said, several different organizations, and then coming to start Compel, I've had my hands in quite a few organizations since then. And all of them have wrestled with the same question of how do we navigate a intake onboarding process? How do we navigate a database? Because all of the big ones that are out there, they're not designed for nonprofit use, right? They're designed for for-profit use. And it's always felt like putting a square peg in a round hole. And I've done that repeatedly. I'm not going to name what those big ones are, but I've used numerous ones over the first 15 years of my career. And we'd pay this huge dollar amount, and we would start implementing these products, and then we would just start hitting roadblocks because they were not designed for nonprofit and particularly for missions or ministry uses. And it just didn't line up, and it never felt like it worked. And so when I got connected with y'all and started learning about the way that you're set up, it was like, oh my gosh, these people get me. They get my world. And then you revealed the price point, and I was like, oh man, you really get my world. And so it was so helpful because you guys truly, I mean, Service was an answer to prayer. And you can pay me later for this, Micah, but it was such a godsend for us. And so I recommend you guys far and wide to every mission organization client that I connect to, because it just makes it makes sense with the niche that we are in. Now, as far as what's been the most value for me and our team in tracking candidates is just the ability to be able to upload files, have kind of a home for not only the forms and the initial contact information that people are giving us, but then when they want to add their resume in, which is a key part of what we're doing, when When I conduct my interviews and I'm capturing their story and their triggers and all these different things, and I'm uploading all of that, now we're actually building out a full file that contains solid organizational data for us to be able to use moving forward. So I don't know if that fully captures what you're after, but it's definitely an endorsement. I love what you guys are doing. You really are an answer to prayer for a lot of ministries that need help in this area.
Thank you for that. And we enjoy partnering with you in that journey as well, of just being silent partners behind and trying to come alongside folks and help organize. Um, okay, so as we wrap up, JJ, what for those who might be in the mobilization space, either directors of mobilization, mobilizers, folks that maybe even on their journey or working at a church staff, that are helping to try to draw folks into how God's called them. What is one piece of advice maybe you can share with others that are in this arena?
I do a fair amount of training with mission organizations on just recruitment, mobilization, what works, what doesn't, and I do some consulting with them on that. And I think that the biggest thing, or I guess the most pressing thing that comes up to me is when a candidate comes to you, at a conference or at a church or even online, they're always leading off with a question, which is, "Oh, tell me about your organization." And that the problem is when we answer that question, because if we say, "Yeah, here's what our organization does, this, and this," we make it about us. And what I see as the most effective strategy of mobilization is to very, very, very quickly pivot and say, I'm happy to tell you about my organization, but I really want to start with you. Why are you here? What is God doing in your life? I want to shepherd you, and I want to connect you. And that might be in my organization, it might not be. But to really embody mobilization from a listening posture rather than a teaching posture is going to be the game changer. And it seems so simple. And we're all like, "Oh yeah, okay, I get that. Listen first." And then we go back to our old ways when we're at a conference or at a church, and it really is disheartening. And the number of times that I've been able to connect with a candidate and draw them out, and they're like, "Wow, people don't ask me those questions often." Okay, that tells me something. And so I think we always need to be checking our own spirits as mobilizers. Like, this isn't about us. It's not about our organization. It's not about our organizational story, as great as that might be. It's not about our history. It's not about our founder. It's not about our values. It's about, what is God doing in the heart of this person that's across the table from me, and how can I help? And we've got to have that posture of just serving.
I love it. And yeah, it is a little bit like a rubber band. We can stretch a little bit, but if we let go, it just goes back in place, right? So
Yeah,
we have these habits that are built up over time. It's like, oh, we got to break them, got to break them. Tell me, how can listeners engage with you more? Where are some ways they can find you or find out more about Stride, find out more about Compel Global? Like, where's a good place to engage with you?
totally. A couple of things. You can go to compelglobal.org. You can find everything on there. That would be the easiest place to begin a conversation with me. JosiahHarling.com is another place to learn more about my personal side of ministry as well. Social media, both Compel Global as well as Josiah Harling, on Instagram, Facebook, all of that, LinkedIn. And then the biggest thing, it's one thing to send people to a website. It's another thing to send people to you personally, which is the open invitation. Josiah at compelglobal.org is the simplest, easiest way. Guaranteed response, and you'll just connect directly with me, and I'd love to help.
That's awesome. I appreciate that. And again, it's Josiah Harling with Compel Global. And Josiah, thank you so much for spending time today. It was a fun conversation, and I enjoyed. I always enjoy it, but I definitely enjoyed it today. Thank you for your time.
Good time, Micah. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Is there any question you wish I'd asked?
Oh man. Um, I don't know. That requires me to do a lot of preparation work. No, I don't think so. I think we hit them
Okay.
all, man. That was great. It was a good conversation.
So no, it is a lot of fun. I enjoy it, and it's dude. I could talk about some of that direction, endurance, resilience stuff. I'm like, dude, that is an interesting element of how do you develop that, because you can't develop that for someone. They have to do it themselves, right? So what's cool about Stride and in just hearing a little bit about it, JJ, that is they're walking through their own journey, but also realizing where God has already gifted them and talented, given them those capabilities and the tools in their toolbox to go do that.
Yep.
They just don't see them as that all the time, right? So
100%.
I'm really excited to see kind of what the impact is of that, JJ,
Yeah,
as you go through
me too, man.
this journey.
Me too. And it's something that, I in no way feel like the expert in, but rather like this is some of the stuff that God's been working on me in my own heart in the last, 20 years. And it's like, okay, maybe that's for the benefit of others, right? And we've
Yeah.
always got to be asking that question: what has God allowed in my life specifically for the benefit of others? Because we know that's His purpose. We are never the end user, right? And so to have that stewardship mindset of God, even the stuff I wish I could sweep under the rug and forget about, like even that, we worship a God who's like, nope, I want to use that for the benefit of others, um, constantly. And I think that's always the question. You know, Genesis 12, where, there's the Abrahamic covenant where
Yep.
God essentially says, hey, Abraham, I'm blessing you so that you bless the nations. And
Yeah.
the question is always, what's the so that in your life? We've got this weird narrative as American Christians when it comes to blessing, where it's like something to either feel guilty for or feel entitled to. And when people go on a short-term trip, they're like, "Oh man, I have all this stuff, right? I'm a wealthy American," and then they jump to one of those two narratives: either I've earned it, I'm entitled to it, or the more common one is, "Oh, I feel so guilty for it." And when you look at Scripture, neither of those are scriptural. Neither of them. Instead, God is like, "Hey, I blessed you to steward it." And what if we just change that narrative completely, where it's like, dude, this is nothing to feel guilty for. This is something to be stewarded. And if we have that posture with the good things, even the bad things, even the painful things, even the things that are mundane that we think are not related to the impact God has designed us for, all of that, what does it look like to steward that for the sake of the blessing of others? And if so, we're going to see the world change, man.
I can hope so. It's yeah. This is so fun. We're almost at time though, so I want to let you go. I could keep talking because I'm like, ooh, well, what about this? So that's where coffee comes in, JJ. We need to do that at some point.
We'll do it again, my man.
Dude, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it, and just the chance to hear your heart and hear about the book and hear the journey that God's had you on. So just thank you for contributing to this conversation and just being who you are. Appreciate it.
Love what you guys are doing, my friend. All right, we'll catch you later.
Thank you so much for listening today. That was Josiah Harling. The book is called Stride, Moving Forward When You Feel Stuck, and you can find it on Amazon or your other retailers. Also, feel free to check out Compel Global as well as josiahharling.com for more of that. And I just want to say, hey, thank you for listening today. We really appreciate that and appreciate your time. Please click subscribe or like. That helps us continue these conversations in that space. We're always trying to drive these forward and hopefully challenge you a little bit in your walk. As we talked about today, it's not just about mobilizers, it's about anyone who's trying to follow a faith journey and walking through that and where God has you in that process. And so blessings on you as you go into your day and into your week, and check out more below. Thanks.